Welcome to Sports Scope, the most influential sports talk show in the nation.
What is today, the 19th?
Stay tuned for updates and great sports content.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Sports Scope. I'm your host, Robert Butler, on this 22nd day of August. Got a great show planned for you ahead. This morning, Netflix's Swamp Kings, the Florida football story with Urban Meyer, came out. Watched a lot of them. Watching while I was preparing for the program. I got about 3 episodes in. Got some comments on that. Plus, listen, Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, his holdout said it could go 8 weeks into the season. He is serious about his holdout with the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk about that and how bad that could affect the Kansas City Chiefs. Plus, Baker Mayfield named the starter with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Jordan Love, we've been talking about how Jordan Love's going to be this major bust for the Packers. That's kind of been the narrative. That's a narrative I've bought into. He's actually looked good. His numbers have crisped out, been pretty crisp during the preseason. And, Justin Fields and the Bears got all the hype with the big free agent moves and stuff. But how interesting would that game be? So we'll talk about that and more. Let's go ahead and get our first and only break out of the way. And I'll be back in 49 seconds, and we'll hit the ground running here on Sports Scope. Hello, Sports Scope followers. The program has seen tremendous growth since going 5 days a week. I just wanted to thank everybody for your cash contributions and sharing the program with friends and families. Just a reminder, if you want to contribute to the program, go to the Cash App, the cash sign, and Sports Scope. There are other ways to contribute to the program listed at the bottom of the screen. If you want to advertise on the program, go to Sports, that is Sports with an S, another S, Scope, SKOPE, at gmail.com, just like it's listed at the bottom of the screen. Thank you and enjoy the program. All righty then. You know what? I'll start with the champs, okay? Today is Tuesday, the 22nd, okay? 2 weeks from Thursday, Pickles, will be opening night in the NFL. The Chiefs will be at home against the Detroit Lions. A lot of people talking about that game. Going to be possibly a high-scoring game, perhaps, although the Lions have got a whole new secondary, per se, to go to into week 1. And Chris Jones from the Chiefs said today, it came out today, that Chris Jones here, and this was an article today, this afternoon, suggests that he'll extend the holdout. I got this from Bleacher Report through week 8 without a new contract. It says, as a Kansas City star defensive tackle, Jones continued his holdout new contract. He made it clear he's prepared to extend his hiatus from the team well into the season. Responding to a fan who asked him when he plans on showing up, revealed he's willing to hold out until week 8. I think week 8, that is the time where he can be accredited for the season. He is in his contract year, 29-year-old player. I've mentioned this before. The running stats of a team like, for example, when he was out a few years ago with injury, the Titans beat him 27-3 one time. Okay, you look at his presence on the inside. Very close games that have been played. He gets the pressure on top of the quarterback. One of the most valuable defensive tackles in the entire NFL, defensive player of the year type of category. He wants money second only to Aaron Donald, is what he's saying. Donald is the 3-time defensive player of the year. He's making Chris is making 17.9 this year. So it's not like he's but he wants at least $30 million a year. He wants a hair under of what Donald's got, which is 31.5. Aaron Donald. I mean, that's more than the quarterbacks. Now, if you're top end defensive tackle, other than left, some people would say maybe left tackle, but defensive tackle, even over edge rusher. If you have a dominant defensive tackle and a dominant left tackle, you're in good shape. Other than quarterback, the two most important positions. I'd say tackle first, left, but defensive tackle, if I didn't play anybody else of the 10 guys, if I had, like I said, and you heard it first on this program, I said they're going to be okay when Tyreek Hill goes to Miami. Nobody else said that in the media. But I said they'll be okay. Well, they won the Super Bowl with Tyreek Hill. But I do think that those tackles hurt them when they went to the Super Bowl that year. Obviously, Tampa beat them. I do think that Chris Jones' absence, although they're very well coached on the defensive side, you will see the difference in this team. He's saying, I'm willing to sit 7 games out into the season in a highly competitive. That Charger team is going to be very competitive during this streak. Plus, they play the Denver Broncos. Also, Joey Bosa, he's still holding out. Not the same situation with Bosa as it is with Chris Jones. I'll get to Bosa in a minute. Different situation there. This situation, you are paying Patrick Mahomes a lot of money, and it's going to be more money. He didn't even top out. Patrick Mahomes could hold out, folks. He could hold out for a contract for more money if he wanted to, but he's not built that way. He's already got 2 rings. He's got a $500 million contract as it is. With his endorsements, there's no telling what he's making off the field, even playing in a market like Kansas City, particularly after what he gutted out last year. I think Veach sees that he's got so much capital built up that he's okay with letting this thing sit out. This guy's 29 years old, Chris Jones. If they had a young Aaron Donald on the roster, I would just move Chris Jones. But I'm telling you, this guy is that important with this Kansas City Chiefs team. All right? Looking at, I don't know what the heck. Okay. Just for example, okay, let's look at their schedule. Excuse me. Okay, we know they play 2 weeks from Thursday. They play Detroit, and that spread is 6.5. It's going to favor them. This game, I guarantee you, if Chris Jones is not playing in this game, this Chiefs team, they're going to be hanging on by threads. Because if I am this Lions team, I'm not trying to spread out and use Jared Goff and try to outscore these guys. I'm playing power football. I'm lining up, and I'm trying to keep this guy off the field. Chris Jones will change the game plays for these guys. For example, people thought Peyton Manning was going to be the greatest of all time. At one time, Pickles, I thought Peyton Manning, I don't know, what was it, 2004? What would they like, 14-0 or something like that? I thought Peyton Manning was going to be the greatest quarterback of all time. I really did. And what was it that usually beat these guys in the playoffs? You said, well, Peyton kind of folded. He did this. Well, yep, that's true. That's true. I do like Dwight Freeney and that speed on the outside. That's true when you got a lead. But what they lacked, and any Colts fan will tell you this, was a giant run-stopping, consistent defensive line up front. You know, and the whole idea was, from the management perspective, was that Peyton's going to be up in every single game, and they were mostly in the regular season, right? That they're going to be up so much in the regular season that we're going to put speedy guys out there like your Dwight Freedies of the world, that like the speed of that Tampa 2 defense that Coach Dungy put in. Yeah, that was fine. But if they would have put a meaty defensive tackle in there and a needy player behind him, if they would have looked at it from a three-dimensional standpoint, from 1,000 feet above, from the Goodyear blimp size, they would have been able to see that Peyton can play offense in any speed he wants to play in. Same thing with this Kansas City team. They can run the ball, They can run the ball. But they would have won a lot more Super Bowls, trust me, if they would have had the ability to stop the run on a consistent basis, because Peyton could have played in those particular type of environments. They simply misunderstood. Like Nagata Pickles from the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, look, Kansas City, they could lose to Detroit in opening week. Then they got to play at Jacksonville. Do you think that Peterson, you think Doug Peterson's going to look at that and say, okay, Chris Jones is out week 2. They've had 10 days off. Let's put Trevor in the shotgun and let's get the ball to ETN in the flat. No, he's going to say, no, we're going to play power football, and we're going to utilize the middle of the field, and we're going to keep him on the sideline sweating on the sideline. That's how you beat Brady all those years. That's how you beat Peyton all those years. They're holding their helmet. They're slamming their helmet down on the ground. They could lose week 1. They could lose week 2 at Jacksonville. Yeah, they'll probably beat the Bears at home. Okay? They got to play at the Jets, one of the best defenses in the league. Not one, but 2 running backs that the Jets could use in week 4. All right? At Minnesota can't stop a nosebleed. I think they'd win a shootout there. But then they got to play Denver at home. Denver's very well coached. This is in week 6. Sean Payton's got things settled down. Javonte Williams is back. What are they going to do with Chris Jones there? They're going to run that rock, Pickles. They're going to run the rock and use the clock. They can lose that to Denver. Then they play the Chargers with more personnel with their running game. Now, of course, their Keelan Moore is a big pass-happy offensive coordinator. But if they're smart, which the Chargers have matched up extremely well with them, they can win that game. And then they play. So that's 7 through week 7. Games that I guarantee they can win. The Chicago Bears and at Minnesota, they could, with Austin Eckler, thank you. They could, and that's with the Chargers. This team, the Super Bowl champions, with one of the greatest offensive minds in football, and with Andy Reid, and Patrick Mahomes, one of the greatest. I got him about 5th all time. Quarterbacks of all time, with their offensive line issues and no Chris Jones. If Chris Jones, they could be 2-5 going in to week 8 when Chris Jones comes back. And you know who they play in week 8? They play the Dolphins. And that's in Europe. So that's not a give me. That would be his first game back. Now, if it's me, I'm sorry. I find a way to make it happen. You let wide receivers walk. You will let other players walk. You let players around Chris Jones walk. You keep Chris Jones. And you keep that number 1 player for him. I want that offensive line. I would even let Kels go before I would give up Chris Jones. That's how valuable that type of player is. I don't think they'll miss Bieniemy, even though Bieniemy, I told you guys that I like this team with this Commander team. But this team could potentially be 2-5. I don't think it's saying too much. 2-5, 3-3, the champions. This is one of the things. You have all this success. And eventually people want to get paid. That's why you really don't It's a lot more to it than good coaching and great quarterback play by Tom Brady. Brady never took the max amount of money. He always took less, even before he had the rich supermodel wife. Brady was so caught up, so obsessed with winning that they kept some of these defensive players. They kept receivers. They kept offensive linemen that a lot of us never really heard of. Belichick kept one of the best offensive line coaches in the league. Brady took less, and they were 14-2, 13-3. I mean, just dominant year after year after year. Yeah, they didn't get to the Super Bowl every year, but it seemed like they had the number one seed every other year. It's because they took the right people there. Remember their defensive tackle they got from Miami, Pickles? I can't remember the guy's name. But anyways, he was a staple of that team. So I'm telling you, it's a big deal. Now, Joey Bosa, that's also another one that's been in the news. 18.5 sacks. He's in his last year of his contract. Now, this is a different situation because you have with the 49ers. Now, I just watched Brock Purdy's stat line. 1 incompletion, 7th round pick in his second year, going to be named a starter come week 1 at Pittsburgh. Now, Bosa, on the other hand, he's missed 5 weeks of camp. He's missed all the weeks. Bosa wants to 18.5 sacks, defensive player of the year. Nick Bosa, not Joey, Nick, the brother for 49ers, he wants to be a little bit higher than Aaron Donald. Now, he's young, in his prime, 25, second contract, former number 2 overall pick, making about 17. Chris Jones was making 19. I got those numbers mixed up. This team, they extended Deebo Samuel, paid him big money just about a year or so ago. They paid Trent Williams, the left tackle they acquired from the Commanders there, big left tackle, $20 million plus, paid him. I do expect John Lynch to figure it out. Defensive guy there, wants his team to remain physical. I'll say this, though. With Brock Purdy coming back from that serious injury and playing a team on the road where you need every single advantage you can have. You need every single player that you need, especially up front, because they're a little shaky this year on the back end there. That 49er team, they definitely got to write the check for Nick Bosa, because on the other side there, you got TJ Watt there. How gun shy is Brock Purdy going to be in his first real test after that horrendous elbow injury caused by Hassan Reddick in the NFC Championship game? So I'm going to predict that before week 1, Nick Bosa will get a major contract extension with the San Francisco 49ers. Okay? The other, John Lynch under pressure because of Trey Lance. Yeah, we talked about Trey Lance ad nauseum. Lance is not the guy. At some point, they're probably going to have to come to the conclusion either this year or next year to move on, chop that up as a loss. Now, they'll probably keep him on this year because of the 3-quarterback rule, because of the physicality. What if Brock Purdy gets gun shy in the big games? What if he gets injured again and out for the season? Then you get Sam Darnold in there, who's also had a really good camp. Do you use Lance in special situations here? Does Kyle Shanahan need to adjust his system for Lance? I think they should try to move on after this year. I would probably try to keep the guy here, and I'd try to play Nick Bosa. It won't be as a big deal for Nick Bosa, but I do think that they'll lose very tight games like the Pittsburgh Steelers in that early start time at Pittsburgh. Going to be rocking and rolling in week 1. I do think it's a bigger deal overall where you can lose half, if not 3/4 of the games if Chris Jones is not re-signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. Mark my word. they could be close to 500. The Super Bowl champs, they lacked 2 losses last year, or 14-3, 3 losses last year. They can have that many, if not more, after 7 weeks without Chris Jones, in my humble opinion, Pickles. Traded away the future. And now Bosa's so good and so consistent that I would probably try to work it up as close as Aaron Donald. It costs a fortune to live in San Francisco. I understand the tax issue, but I also understand that you got a Brock Purdy on a rookie contract. Your time to win is right now for the 49ers. They did add Hargrove to the middle of that defense. They could be better in spots. They're not going to be as strong on the back end. They lost guys like Emmanuel Mosley on the back end, but they're still going to be good up front. They were statistically the best defense in the league, even though that Kansas City team chopped them up like nobody's business. Put 44 points on them last year. But my guess is it gets done. I'm going to say that one gets done, that Bosa gets done. Okay, other news today. Okay, Jordan Love. Now, Jordan Love, very similar to Aaron Rodgers. Okay, we all thought Aaron Rodgers was anybody that watched that draft in 2004. I'm about 3/4 of the way into the Urban Meyer Florida Swamp Kings Netflix docuseries. 3 episodes in, it's only 4 episodes. It's very good, very intense. Now, I say that because Urban Meyer, remember he left Utah, took Utah, I think they were like undefeated or something. And in 2005 and then in 2006, he took over Florida. 2004, excuse me. In 2005, he took over Florida. Well, the player he was coaching there was Alex Smith. Alex Smith went on to become the number 1 pick. And a guy named Aaron Rodgers from Cal, who had the awkward stance and is holding the ball above his helmet, he falls way down to the 20s. And then the Packers pick him up in the first round. And then we know what happens after that. 3 solid years, like Jordan Love, sits on the bench. I was never really liked the guy. Reading that he's having a good camp amidst of, far, I'm going to retire. I'm not going to retire. I'm going to retire. I'm not going to retire. And then finally, the Packers said, no, we're going to retire you. We're going to trade you for a 2nd-round pick to the New York Jets, and we're going to keep this kid in here, and we're tired of dealing with you. And I thought, well, we'll see how he looks. And he's still holding that ball above his head, Aaron Rodgers. And we all wrote him off. I know I did. I said, man, this guy's going to be terrible. He's not going to be Favre. But it's the Green Bay Packers. It's not a big town. They had a good run. They went to 2 Super Bowls. They won 1. They had Reggie White on their team. They've had their good times. Now they're going to go back to being a team that nobody pays attention to. And, of course, this guy's getting a little bit better every practice. I'm watching the NFL Network, showing him throw the ball to this guy named Craig Jennings in practice. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, he's just looking pretty good, This Aaron Rodgers, he's holding the ball at a different stance. He's corrected some of his mistakes. Let's see what happens. And I feel like the same thing is with this Jordan Love kid, who everybody wrote off, including myself, especially with the games he played. But then Pro Football Focus puts out today that Jordan Love has got he's 12 out of 18 in the preseason, 130 yards. He's at 124 passer rating, 2 touchdowns. I didn't see any interceptions there in this stat that Pro Football Focus tweeted out. Not saying he's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but I think about the very first game of the season, folks, and that is, I think about the very first game of the season, and I think about this game against Justin Fields and the Bears. You know, it's in Chicago. The Bears are favored. Everybody's overlooking, myself included, overlooking the Green Bay Packers. We're all praising the Bears. They go out and get DJ Moore. They had the first overall pick. They make this big splash trade with the Carolina Panthers. They get DJ Moore, a star receiver, an elite route runner. And mind you, remember towards the end of last season, also got the Pittsburgh Steelers, Chase Claypool, to pair him up with Darnell Mooney, who I like better than Claypool Pickles. Definitely a number 2 there. Cole Kmet, they extended their tight end there. They were rumored to get maybe Saquon Barkley, maybe Derrick Henry. None of that fell through. They're still on one of the odds guys to get a Jonathan Taylor, who's now on the trading block for the Indianapolis Colts. So you look at that, you see their draft. They get a right tackle for Darnell Wright from Tennessee. He was going to play left tackle. Now they've moved him to right tackle, but he's doing a good job at right tackle. The former University of Tennessee guy in the draft. So everybody's, saying this is a team that's going to make the big jump. And this team with the Green Bay Packers, who Rodgers used to play on, they're going to be the one that falls apart. They're going to be the ones that maybe look okay here and there, but they're not going to be nothing. And, Justin Fields, he's played one game in the preseason. He completed 3 passes and, had a couple of touchdowns here off of some short passes, like my man against the Titans here. And Rich Ferris was discussing, they were just basically screen passes, But let me ask you this. What if Fields goes in there or Jordan Love goes in there and lights up the Bears? What is the narrative going to be like if he does? If the Packers go up there and beat this team? Now, I was also reading that the Packers with David Bakhtiari, we've been talking about the Jets here for weeks, Pickles. We talked about this Jets team for weeks, and man, they really could use a David Bakhtiari on their team. And what can the Jets give to bring in Rodgers left tackle? Bakhtiari says this is the best I've felt in years. He's fully healthy. But then I'm also reading that the Packers are not going to give up Bakhtiari, that Love is having some tremendous protection back there in Green Bay. The pocket's so clean. They said he had the cleanest pocket of anybody in the preseason. It's so clean you can eat off of it. Throw in a guy like a Clay Walker, the second-year possible star, but a little bit of a meathead, the linebacker they got from Georgia here. Throw in a healthy Jaire Alexander there. Throw in wide receiver Christian Watson in another year. Romeo Doubs in another year. They're way up there in Green Bay. Nobody pays any attention to them. That's all you can think about is football up there. You think about it this way, folks. 3 years, Aaron Rodgers sits on the bench. That goes up to 2007. 2008 and 2009, they're in the playoffs. Okay? They get put out, Pickles, you remember this? They get put out in a shootout against Kurt Warner and that high-flying Arizona Cardinal team with Anquan Bolden and Larry Fitzgerald. Remember that, Pickles? So the next year, they come back, have a bunch of injuries, and they win the bleeping Super Bowl the next year. Who would have thought that? So this is an interesting story to follow here with Jordan Love. And we're all assuming because he's bigger, stronger, flashy, bigger market, big moves made in free agent, that the Bears are going to be better than the Green Bay Packers, but that might not even be the truth. Sometimes it's good to kind of lay low. All coaches really want their teams to lay low. You know, Mike LaFleur, he don't want all that smoke. You know, you got the offensive-minded head coach. You've got Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. Although Dillon's a little slow for I like him, but Jones can catch anything you throw to him. And Watson was coming along towards the end with Rodgers there. But that line is supposed to be in tip-top shape, particularly with Bakhtiari. But nobody's paying attention to him. So my thing is, you say, well, what all does this mean? Well, if the Packers beat them in week 1, then the talk is, what about Fields? Defensive-minded head coach and Eberflus. Fields. I've had Jeremy here, my man from Detroit Lions. We talked about that game last year against the Lions where Fields could not make his second and third read. What if all that comes back to fruition and he don't make his reads again? Well, this Bears team, which I think has another first-round pick, they're going to be back into it next year. There's a chance they can move on next year from Justin Fields. Because mind you that polls did not draft Fields. There was discussion of maybe drafting another quarterback this past year. But if you put all the surrounding, right tackle, off defense, a big-time receiver, locked up his tight end, Khalif Herbert, may even get him a running back. If you do all this, there is a chance that Fields and this team could be in the cellar and they could be back out drafting again. And the Packers be the team quietly selling up the radar, which also they're going to have a second, maybe a first-round pick, likely a first-round pick from the Jets next year in this Rodgers trade. Pickle says Mooney is his favorite target. Mooney, very good route runner. Yeah, he's got Tanyan. Fields has Tanyan. That's a former Green Bay Packer there. So, you know, we'll see how all this plays out. But that's the drama of the very first game. Those are two storylines of the very first game of the season. Here's another one. Okay. What about the storyline of the Bills? Okay. There was a report yesterday, and I didn't put this in the title, but I might as well mention it. I'll touch on this story again at another time. Stephon Diggs, according to Stephen A. Smith, now he wants out again out of Buffalo. Diggs comes on X or Twitter or whatever. No, that's bleep. That's not happening. Stephen A. Smith doesn't back away from his stance. Diggs denies it. We'll see what happens. They play the Jets Monday night, 9/11, Monday Night Football, very first game of the season. If the Jets beat them, does Diggs reiterate the fact that he wants out of Buffalo? Is there another blow-up in the locker room that makes it out to the media? Possibly. What's the other side of it? Dwayne Brown plays, he don't play. Left tackle for the Jets. What if Von Miller gets in the backfield and injures Aaron Rodgers and they lose the game and he's hobbling after the game? Then it's, well, you didn't get your offensive line. Now you point the finger at Robert Saleh going with his defensive guys and not protecting Aaron Rodgers. Those are two opening night huge storylines that nobody is really talking about. Either way, there's going to be a storyline for those two particular games. That Bears and Packers game is going to be much bigger than people think. And, of course, that Jets and Buffalo game is probably going to be the biggest storyline, topping all the storylines opening here. Okay, there's other news now. Baker Mayfield, speaking of teams nobody's giving two bleeps about, myself included, okay? The over and under for this Tampa Bay Bucks team is 6.5. Let me double check this, Pickles. Let me double check this. That's why I took down my screenshots, right? I got so many screenshots here, folks. I can't even keep up with it. Okay, so Tampa Bay's at 6.5 wins. Todd Bowles says Baker Mayfield's my quarterback. You know, Kyle Trask would have been the other guy, right? The second round pick out of from 2021. Looks like Chris Jensen, their center there, is probably going to be out for a while. That's another strike against Baker Mayfield. So let me say something here. Other than Arizona, I think this Tampa team, with the way their offensive line played last year, other than Thriston Wirfs, even Wirfs got hurt last year, if you don't recall, this team has the lowest expectations of just about any team other than Arizona in the whole league, if you ask me. They're picked to finish last in the South. We saw how bad it looked even with Brady being there, even though they found a way to get to the playoffs anyways in that god-awful division. But I'll say this. You know, Mayfield was a former number one pick. I'm totally writing them off as nothing. That being said, what if they do win the division? What if your Carloses of the worlds is right? You still got, let me make sure and mention this. Let's see this depth chart here. I want to make sure and not get these names jacked up here, okay? You still got Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, okay? Those are some pretty good wide receivers here. Now, of course, they've already had one of the receivers, their third or fourth receivers go down here. Rachaad White, Chase Edmonds here, Keyshawn Bond in year 3, Vita Vita on defense. Very good up front there. Devin White said he wanted out, and then he changed his mind. Levante David's going to be back. They'll play hard. What if they surprise people and make it? It would be one of the biggest turnarounds, write-off teams ever. And I say that because last year I was with Geno Smith with Seattle over Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner. They ship him off to the LA Rams. Jamal Adams is hurt last year. By the way, he's supposed to be back, by the way. With Geno Smith, there was talks of, and I've got this sourced even through Jim Jeffcoat, was on the program last week. He has connections around the league. Jim Jeffcoat said, listen, I got connections around the league saying that if Pete Carroll, if this is a losing proposition here for Seattle, Pete Carroll's butt's gone. Of course, we know what happened. They end up beating Denver, and Denver ends up firing Nathaniel Hackett, and Russell Wilson's got a new coach, and they had the awful record. And Seattle ends up making the playoffs. So crazier things have happened here. But it would save Baker Mayfield's career. Now, this situation, I think they'll play hard early. But Mayfield, never as fast as he thinks he is. What is he on his third? This is his fourth team in 2 years. So, he went from Cleveland to where else did he go? I can't remember now. I want to say Carolina. He went from Cleveland to the Rams. Kind of bounced around, to say the least, Baker Mayfield. And that third team in 2 years. Either way, based on never mind, he's Baker Mayfield, right? And it would be a tremendous storyline if that happened. Now, he's named starter. What I think is going to happen, I do not think it's going to be like Pete Carroll. Remember, Pete Carroll won Super Bowls. Todd Bowles has never really been a good head coach. He was fired with the Jets. Now, he never really got a great quarterback. He got Brady, but in his defense, they did have offensive line injuries that happened in camp that year. Wasn't in love with Garrard as a offensive coordinator. That didn't work out. No time for Brady. They still won the division, got beat by Dallas in the playoff. But it would be one out of nowhere. My whole point is it would simply be one of those deals if they were make the playoffs with Mayfield. But I don't think so. I think they're probably going to finish about in the top 5. Bowles will be fired, probably keep his place down in Tampa. I notice Urban Meyer's still got a place in the water. He still lives down in Florida. He's just not in that pressure cooker down in Florida. So does Tony Dungy. I think they'll move off Bowles. They'll get an offensive-minded head coach, and they'll be in line to get one of those great quarterbacks, whether it be Drake May, Caleb Williams, or somebody else who may emerge. Maybe McCaffrey from Michigan, maybe Penix from Washington. It's supposed to be a very good class coming up. So Pickle says this is going to be Baker, meaning Baker. Yeah, that's the real. I mean, I'm just saying it would be the one that I never seen coming. If Mayfield. Now, you can make a case. Maybe this offensive line plays above their head. I mentioned guys like Mike Evans and Godwin. Maybe they stay healthy, and this team plays field position football. They find a way to win the South and win a few playoff games. It would be unbelievable. I still think the Saints will probably win that division. Not saying much. Not sure what to think of this Atlanta team. I know they've upped their defense. Ritter's not too over the top, but he don't need a lot because he's got a lot of weapons around him in those young, hungry skill players with that Atlanta team. And, of course, Carolina's going to be good defensively, but we don't know what's going to happen with Young here. One wrong hit, this dude can be out for a long time. Pickle says better chance of winning the Powerball than the Bucs winning the division. That's my take. I think if you really want to get some odds, it should be like 50-1 or something to make the playoffs. And that's in the down NFC. But again, maybe the Packers make it. You know, the Packers are kind of, said the Bucs, as they start Baker Mayfield opening day. Yeah, I'll be, and that's about right. They're probably about 4-13, picking in that top 5, or probably 1 or 2. If I wanted to be exact, I think the defense will play hard early. They'll get frustrated with Baker. Cal Trask will play at some point this season, kind of like the Raiders. But then again, this Aiden O'Connell, I found out today, that guy's 25 years old. I talked about him yesterday. So it's some interesting storylines there, to say the least. Okay, other news. I was talking about this James Harden thing. All right. Now, James Harden, I want to say that the league, I don't know if the team or the league fined James Harden. I'm going to make sure and make sure I get this right here, because I think I did not put this down correctly. I want to say the league had fined James Harden $100,000 for this. But I'll tell you what the NBA Players Association said, which really got me thinking about this situation here. And it is that that Harden here is okay, here we go. Let's see. The NBA Players Association will file a grievance to an arbitrator disputing the NBA's $100,000 fine on Philadelphia's James Harden and the league's assertion that his recent statements violated the collective bargain agreement rules against public trade demands. They said, we respectfully disagree with the league's decision to discipline Harden for recent comments he made, which he believed do not violate the rule against the public trade demands. No, he won't. That's a public trade demand. This must have been a part of the new CBA there. This is the league trying to take back some power from the players which has been out of the control for a long time. You know, players like Ben Simmons pushing his way out of town because he got a little criticism from the 76ers. You know, some people say LeBron caused all this with the super teams and all that. You know, I'll say this. Part of me believes what James Harden said. That being said, I talked about Daryl Morey yesterday on the program. I think he's just full of crap anyways. But the league is trying to show some type of authority. I wish they would have made it where they do not, and the major league has got the same issue. You don't want to have fully guaranteed contracts. You do want to have some time. I want guys to get paid. I want people to get paid. Don't get me wrong. I know it's a lot of dedication. But when you give the players too much power, then you're having a player-driven league. Then you're starting to get things totally off the rails here. You know, I think maybe players, not rookie contract, but second contract on, if they're in a bad situation where you got new management, you new coaching staff, I think you should have an opportunity to buy out your own contract, and you pay part of it the new team. That's something that could be done. But as far as just pushing yourself off of a team here, and just because something don't go that you like, every little thing that goes wrong, it's bad for the league, man. It's bad for the league. And quite frankly, it didn't work with New Jersey on numerous occasions. It didn't work with Houston or with Philadelphia. It's kind of like bad karma, right? So Harden pushes his way off of Houston. He gets out of shape and everything. Then he goes to what was it? Then I think he went to the Nets. Then he went to Philadelphia. This guy's pushed his way out of every team that everything's not working perfect for him. Although he's showing up out of shape sometimes and not being a leader per se. So it's just $100,000 fine. That's peanuts for him. You kind of wish you would have a little bit more authority, maybe some game suspension or something like that. Again, with the guaranteed contracts, that's one of the mistakes that I think the NBA has made over the years. NBA fined Harden for running his mouth. Conduct detrimental business model of the NBA. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that thing plays out. I think that fine will probably stand. It's James Harden. He's on the back end of his career. Quite frankly, I don't know why they don't move him out of Philadelphia. I heard yesterday the Colin Cowherd program. Now, I didn't get any sources on this. He's saying that there's rumors now that Joel Embiid may want out of Philadelphia, and he might get traded. Well, to a team like a New York or somebody like that, and they just start the whole thing over and run it through Tyrese Maxey. Now, that would be interesting. I don't know what a guy like Harden, he's just a trade piece. He's not the piece. He's not number 2. He might not even be number 4 or 5. He probably should just come off the bench if it's up to me, at his age now, if it's me. I don't think he is a center point there. But yeah, now, of course, they fired Doc Rivers. If the Knicks can find a way to send some young players there, some young prospects, they got multiple first-round picks, maybe get Embiid up there, work with Thibodeau. Thibodeau's going to have to watch it. He can't press this guy too hard in the regular season because he is injury-prone. But he pressed hard to get that MVP last year, and then he ran out of gas in the playoffs like he always does. He needs to learn some pace. A better diet. I still think there's potential there with Embiid, but he's got to change what he's doing. He's got to keep his weight down, his minutes down. He's got to pace himself better. A change could do him good. They probably should just start over and build around Maxey. That's a story to monitor up there in Philadelphia. Again, I'm not a big fan of Daryl Morey. I talked about that yesterday. It probably should start with maybe go get an assistant from Sam Presti or somebody with the Oklahoma City Thunder, or maybe get one of Danny Ainge's guys and start over there from the management perspective. That's just me. Morey's overrated. I've been saying that for last couple of days now, Pickles. Dump Julius Randle pick. Yeah, I mean, maybe they'll take Randle. A lot of picks. They probably want some young talent as well for Embiid. But Randle would probably help balance out the contracts, per se, for the New York Knicks. And, of course, Thibodeau, he don't want to deal with no James Harden. Nobody wants Harden. Move him back to Houston. If he wants to go back to Houston, they want him. Give me some young prospects. Just go to hang out with the strip club in Houston with the head coach up there, who I'm reading, head coach now, he's not paying his child support. So one thing after another there in Houston. Okay, I've been wanting to talk about this thing since I came on. Swamp Kings. Florida documentary with Urban Meyer, new Netflix documentary. Been looking forward to this thing for weeks now. You know, when Urban Meyer takes over in 2005 in that pressure cooker, he's saying that he could feel the pressure like the first day going there. He wanted the challenge. These players, like, man, they trying to get us prepared like we're going to Iraq or something. The players are throwing up in the gym. He's having players do now. One thing, I mean, that throwing up's fine. I get it. I've watched a lot of the stuff with the Alabama team with Nick Saban, but these MMA type of exercises where they are. One player is trying to keep another player from crawling or something like that, and the guys are elbowing each other and the sides. It's pretty physical. It doesn't even look like it'd be helpful. This looks stupid and dangerous. I think what Meyer was trying to do there is trying to get guys to jump on loose balls and get fumbles and everything. So it shows crazy stuff down there. And, you know, I can understand it is basically what I thought it was. Like I mentioned before, only coached there, Pickles, for 5 years. And this was when Spurrier comes back from the NFL, did not work out with the Redskins. Then he takes the job at South Carolina. They had some Ron Zook, this clown coach there, good recruiter, not a very good coach there. They fire him. They bring in Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer first year beats Tennessee, but this spread offense, which I didn't realize he was the first coach that really brought that spread to the SEC, and they lost to South Carolina and had a pretty bad season. I think they lost like 6 games that first year. He's already thinking he's going to get fired. You know, the next year, bring in this very good recruiting class, including Tim Tebow in 2006 and 7, I think. Bring in this rookie here with Chris Leak. Remember that, Pickles? Remember Leak? Leak, the big, powerful freshman that runs the ball forward, and then you got Chris Leak. He's a little bit more smoother there of a passer. And they were just barely, they almost lost again in the swamp against South Carolina. And the Florida player blocks the kick. And Urban Meyer, it shows the look on his face. And he says, I thought I was going to get fired right then. He's living and dying with these big plays. So you could see how he got his heart issue towards the end there with that 5th year. So in that 2nd year, long story short, they win that game. They did. I think they lost to Auburn that year. Auburn found a way to beat them, and they go on. They catch a break, and they went for a fake punt. They were down by 4 points in the SEC championship game against Arkansas that year. On their own 10-yard line, it turns out to be a 30-yard gain. And he's about to have a heart attack there, but they convert it. And long story short, that second year, they go on and beat Ohio State in the national championship. That was that game where Ted Ginn ran the opening ball back, scored a touchdown there. And Urban Meyer said, "Oh, my God, we're going to get beaten." And then one of the players said, "Listen, coach, if we can't score more than 7 points, we don't deserve to be here." And then Urban Meyer, "Yeah, F it. What was really funny about this thing is, you had this guy from Jacksonville, Tim Tebow, that they recruited like nobody's business. Going back to Tebow was really sold on going to play for Mike Shula at Alabama. Okay, he was sold on doing this. Okay, and Urban Meyer kept recruiting. Home State writing him letters. Just writing him handwriting letters, doing everything personally. At the last minute, he decides he calls Urban Meyer to tell him he's going to go play for him because he's going to do the hat thing, right, Pickles? And the call drops, and Urban Meyer's banging on this car, thinking, "Man, I'm ruined. I wanted to get this kid." And the call just dropped. So Tebow goes on TV, puts the Florida hat on, and then Meyer, he's ecstatic. So, but here's the thing, though. If he loses Tebow, then Mike Shula probably wins with Tebow at Alabama, but they never hire the legend. Maybe they win anyway because the next year they got like the Cam Newton class. And of course, Cam Newton, they didn't talk about this, but I know it. He was involved with stealing a laptop, kicked off the team, right? So it's funny the way things work out. Mike Shula loses Tebow. He has a pretty mediocre season. They fire this guy, son of Don Shula. Then they bring in Nick Bleepin Saban, all right? So going back to that national championship game, then that's when they started partying like rock stars, and that's when all the trouble started happening. They mentioned Aaron Hernandez. They mentioned the bar fights. They didn't go too deep into that. Tebow was with Hernandez, and Tebow was trying to get him out of a bar. The guy kept saying something, and Hernandez, punched him out. And they had a lawyer, Pickles. I didn't know this. That took care of all this stuff. That defended all these players. That Florida had their own lawyer. I didn't know if this was even legal, but he's defending all this stuff, and it just gets pushing up under the rug, and the rug's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we know what happened there. I mean, you had guys that were DUIs. Hernandez was accused of one of the murders led back to Florida, and then he had the stuff that happened post-career. Then you had one saint, this guy, read the Bible, didn't do nothing. He was just, and it was Tim Tebow. He was the savior. And I made some notes here. So Paul Feinbaum's interviewed, and he said he'd let these guys get away with murder. So Urban Meyer says, listen, I kicked the player off my first year. And he says, this guy's name was, let me make sure I got this cat's name right. He kicked the player off for punching a woman, okay? And his name was Avery Akins, very highly recruited guy. Punched his girlfriend in 2006. Urban Meyer said that was zero tolerance, kicks the guy off the team. Year later, this guy dies of a drug overdose. So Meyer has a more tender heart towards the players. Nick Saban said the same thing. I'd rather have the guy discipline him here, keep him under my wraps, than send him out on the street, not unless he continues to mess up really bad, so I can discipline him and be that father figure. So this guy, dies of a drug overdose. So this probably explains Urban Meyer's issue years later for not, firing the coach that was linked to domestic abuse at Ohio State that ultimately led to his retirement there. So all this pressure, after they win the championship, they have a bad year in 08, 09, they win another national championship, just barely beat that Nick Saban team. And then, of course, after that, they played in the SEC championship game again. Saban beat them. And then, of course, that was year 5. He said he had the heart issue. It was too much. 5 years, 2 national championships, and the possibility of playing for 3, and the pressure was too much for him. It's a pressure cooker. And you could see him showing, almost breaking out in a sweat, interviewing about these games. Pickle says lots of bodies buried in Alabama. He said Myers recruited thugs. Yeah, he had a lot of thugs. He said, listen, a lot of those guys were the best athletes. In his defense, yeah. Some of those guys were the 5-star players, but they're from these projects, these hoods, areas like where I grew up, So it's an interesting. And, of course, there was an Athletic article said they totally downplayed how serious that time was. So, interesting stuff. If you guys like the show, share the show. It's funny, Pickles. Baby Jesus here. I'm going to have to get me some more water and get off here. I'll be back on tomorrow, same time, same place, here on Sports Scope.